Hello and welcome, Doris here. I wanted to find a way to document my thoughts about the coronavirus and the impact it has had on our daily living. So I've come up with this junk journal here to highlight those thoughts. I used a cake mix box and leftover scraps from some of the masks that I made for this cover. I've also used cardstock and I embossed this top piece here, and I've stitched it around and added some cheesecloth and this felt heart here I've stitched around, and I bought a bag of those at our local thrift store. You'll see a few of them throughout the book. I also included this vintage button here, seam binding, and some vintage lace. This is a 2 signature journal with approximately 86 pages, 5 by 7, and it is bound with a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, and it is secured with these fabric ties that mimic the first mask that I made. Let's get into the journal. Both of the front and back cover of the journal have these patchwork pockets that I've included with the trim on the edge here. And in this first pocket here is a die cut from Stampin' Up! And I just backed it with some cardstock. Even has a cute little door that opens there. And since we're all asked to stay in place, stay home, I thought that would be a really great idea to put in the beginning of the book here. And some of the scrapbook paper I've used in here is from Colorbach, and that collection was called Modern Millinery. And I've also used some Stampin' Up! Paper, and I believe that's retired, and it was called Needlepoint Nook. And on this first page you can see I've made a fabric ruffle here. This here is from a calendar page, a little flip up. Here I added some planner paper. I just stapled together here. Vintage greeting card. A scrapbook cut apart. And avocado dyed paper I've used throughout that I've made. And on the next page here we have some vintage rickrack trim, a coloring book page, and I experimented with some ink spray here. Another calendar page, vintage greeting card. So I've left myself lots of places to write in this journal. Vintage trim here. And we have some vintage ledger with some of the fabric I used for the mask here, and then a little writing tablet paper there. This is wallpaper, and then just a little button packet I've included. And on this one here we have vintage children's writing paper. And if you'll notice on this journaling card here that this actually was supposed to be one whole page, and I just cut that off to make the journaling card. And that to me represents what all these kids have gone through, not seeing their friends, and how much it has affected school and college and graduations. And over here, scrapbook paper, and this is from a vintage envelope here, just for a tuck spot. And then we have, since this has happened over Easter, I received a Easter card from my mother-in-law. I thought would be a good remembrance to keep inside the journal. And I just have some vintage trim along the edge here, writing paper, More scrapbook paper. There's a couple pockets I've included. Scrapbook cutter parts. And this is from like a Project Life type card. And I just added a piece of paper just to give me some more journaling space and a little bit of trim at the bottom there. Another coloring page. Also included a pattern. I really felt like, since I'm making masks and doing all the sewing, I just thought it would fit well for this type of journal. And plus the colors coordinated really well with the fabric that I use. So, and then on the other side, here's the flap from the pattern. I've just stitched it on the back. And these are just some journaling cards. And on this particular journaling card, it already had these dashed lines here, and I just put the word mask there. And I backed it with some avocado paper. More vintage trim. This is the center of the first signature, and this journal, I really wanted it to also represent something peaceful. And so this here is from a calendar page, and I thought this bench was fit that well. These are a couple punches that I had. And here we have another, this rabbit is from another vintage card. I just kind of stitched around, and this is a vintage envelope here. Another little cutter parts. More spaces to journal. Over here, another journaling card. A vintage button card. Just added some lined paper on the back. Back of that pattern. And this particular pattern was dated 1965. The rest of that coloring page. And in this pocket here, I've added a little index card. Over here, one of those little message notes. And I added a little saying on here, "For health and food, for love and friends, Father, we thank thee." And this actually goes along with this children's page here. And if you let me look at my notes here, this came from a Prayers for Children Little Golden book, and that was dated 1942. And then this is the top of another old envelope, journaling card. Another event that's greatly been affected with the virus is those that go to church, not being able to go to church. So I thought that was a really cute addition to the book. It would work well. Writing paper, part of the calendar page. Another punch that I have. Scrapbook paper with some trim. Just backed it with some lined paper. The coloring page, and again, even on this here, I have a park bench, so thought that would be good. This came from a writing tablet, and I just backed it with some of my ink paper I did. A little trim on the edge there. In the beginning of the second signature, I put another fabric ruffle. I believe my mom called this fabric batik, if I'm not mistaken. That's that one. We have a vintage bingo card. I just add a little vintage trim. And this here is a iron-on cross stitch. I just used some decorative scissors around the edge on the avocado paper. Another vintage greeting card. And then here we have a Rolodex card that I just did a little bit of stenciling on. It's a paint chip. I stitched around, put some avocado paper on the back with some more fabric. Another cutter part. And journaling card. I just kind of trimmed with a different pair of scissors. More vintage trims. And this paper here, it's kind of like where you can just make your own calendar. I found a whole tablet of this at the vintage antique store. And I thought this might be a good place to document recipes, our menus. I've been keeping weekly menus just to try to keep my sanity, I guess you could say. This page here is mapped from Michigan. And part of how this virus has affected me is I was supposed to go back home to Michigan to help my mom move and wasn't able to do that. But luckily my sister and her family were able to. And so I was grateful that they were able to do that for her. And then in the pocket here I've made just another journaling card. And some more writing paper I've added. Another coloring page. And the world is made beautiful all over again. We are hoping. Here's a fabric flip with some of my fabrics I use for the masks. Writing paper. More vintage trim. Another greeting card. Another part of an old envelope. Different type of writing paper here. I just stapled a few sheets together. Avocado paper. There's another part of a calendar page. This card here was originally a Valentine's card. I just trimmed off the Valentine part and thought that would be really cute to add in. Then here, this little flip out with the writing paper. You'll see there's airplanes on here. I thought this would be a good place to document how much air travel has been affected and the subway systems, things like that. I thought would be good to put in here. And also the price of gas, how much that has gone down. Then on this page we have some vintage feed sack trim. And no, I definitely did not use that to make any masks. And let's see, another one of our, the Stampin' Up! Die cuts I used. This time I added the little die cut that had for the curtains, just to change it up a bit. And just some graph paper I've included to write on. Another one of the vintage Prayers for Children pages. And then a journaling card here, like a little potting shed. I backed with some of my inked paper. The middle of the second signature, again, another peaceful image I felt. And used another little punch that I have, little butterflies there. I have more of that wallpaper added with some vintage ribbon. Here's a vintage envelope. And for this, what I did was I just cut the bottom and the top off. And then I added some punches on here. And the dark blue there is actually from a paint chip card. So I just added some note paper. So more places to write. And this here is another paint chip card. And this one I have a stamp from Stampin' Up! This one was called Pop On By. Put a little trim on there. Backed it with some more of my avocado paper. Another place to write. That journaling card. Then on this here, let's see, we have a little page from a children's book, more or less representing the zoo. We have a wonderful zoo here, the Henry Doorly Zoo in Omaha. Typically ranked in the top 3, I believe, in each year. And they have taken a big hit through this virus, and along with other all types of parks, museums that are affected. So I thought this would be a good spot to journal about that. This here, let's see. This is a special place I wanted to document about my sister, who is an RN, was on the front lines, and just wanted a way to write down how it has affected her as an RN. And also, I'd also like to thank all of those that are on the front lines, whether you're stocking our shelves or making deliveries, you know, the police, fire, our postal service, all those services still are needed. And I greatly appreciate all those that have done such a great job helping all of us. And this came from a vintage card. This little girl here, I just trimmed off her dress a bit. Some scrapbook paper and more of the fabric I used for the mask. Added a little guest check. A little bit of stenciling on there. More of my fabric from the mask there. And another one of the images from that children's book. For fragrant air and cooling breeze, Father in heaven, we thank thee. Another of my fabric ruffles I made. Another greeting card. Placed to right. The back of that map. And there's a pocket on this one side as well, and I made another place to write with some more journaling paper, writing paper. This here is from a calendar page. I turned it into an envelope. This is from a children's music book. And then I backed it with some really old note paper that I found at a estate sale. That's what it was, estate sale. And if you look on this real close, it shows Omaha, Nebraska, and it says 1930 blank. So this is definitely some very, very old paper. And on the other side of this greeting card, have a little message there. May life be always sweet and kind, skies be always blue, and sweetest pleasure and bright days always come to you. Then on this last page here, we have an envelope that I turned inside out. And there is a letter in here that came from my youngest, who was in basic training with the Air Force during this virus pandemic. And the letter more or less said that we were not able to go down and watch him graduate, that they were suspending all graduations for the public. So not only was it disappointing for family and friends that wanted to go down there, it was also extremely disappointing to the troops who were already homesick. So, but I thought that would be a good memento to put in. And then I also flipped it up, made a little pocket. And then here is a little piece of paper that actually came off of this writing paper here, and I'm going to be putting his basic training address on that. A couple sheets of writing paper. And this image, I really liked it because to me it was a good reminder that the virus has affected not just those of us in the U.S., but all over the world. And on the back pocket here, another gardening coloring page. And I thought this would be a good spot to write about how much the virus has affected farming and its effects on certain foods and other products that we've needed. And then one more card here. And I just put Our America song in here, and that came from a children's music book. And then on the back of the book, I've added, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I've added this little felt heart where I have stitched on my name around there and used some embroidery thread and stitched it on. And that is it. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you will join me again when I share another project. Thank you and have a good day.